Welcome to Learning with UNP. In this session of Business Intelligence with Power BI, we are going to learn about querying strategies, when to use reference or duplicate. This concept is critical for efficient data modeling in Power BI. We will focus on the following key points. What is referencing? What is duplicating? Use of referencing and duplicating. Difference between referencing and duplicating. And finally, when to use reference versus duplicate. We will be using the Superstores dataset for our practical implementation. First, let's talk about referencing. Referencing a query in Power BI means that you are creating a new query that is linked to the original one. Any changes made to the original query will reflect in the reference query. However, the reference query can have additional transformations which do not impact the original query. Think of referencing as creating a branch of the original query that stays connected but allows for further customization or transformations in a new context. Now, let's move on to duplicating. When you duplicate a query, you're creating completely independent copy of the original. Any changes you make to the original query will not affect the duplicate, and any changes made to the duplicate won't impact the original. Duplicating is helpful when you need to make significant changes without worrying about affecting the base query. It is a standalone copy. Now the question is, when should you use referencing and when should you use duplicating? The answer is this. We use referencing when you want to apply additional transformations but still rely on the original query's data and structure. We use duplicating when you need full control over a copy of the data, allowing independent modifications. The main difference between referencing and duplicating is the link to the original query. Referencing is linked to the original query, meaning any changes in the original query will reflect in the referenced query. Duplicating is independent of the original query, so changes made in either the original or the duplicate will not affect the other query. Now let's see how to practically implement this using the Superstores dataset. In the Superstores dataset, we have columns like ship date, ship mode, segment, category, subcategory, sales, etc. For our task, we are particularly interested in the segment column. Segment column includes different types. So there are three different types in segment: consumer segment type, corporate segment type, and home office segment type. Let's say, as per our organization's order, we must create three separate tables for each segment type. A table for consumer sales, a table for corporate sales, a table for home office sales. Let's see how we can achieve this. To find reference duplicate options, right-click on the Superstores data query. We have multiple options over here. Here you can find duplicate and reference options. First, let's disable the load for Superstores data. But why do we need to disable the load? Disabling the load for the main dataset ensures that Power BI does not try to load the same data twice into memory, which can slow down our performance. The original Superstores data will serve as a base for our reference queries, but we don't need it displayed in the report. So for that, we will disable the load. To disable the load, let's click on Enable Load. A warning comes like this. Disabling load will remove the table from the report and any visuals that use these columns will be broken. We want that. Click on Continue. If you can see here, the text is in italic format, which means this data is not loaded. Now, we will start by creating a reference of the Superstores data. To create a reference of it, right-click on the Superstores data query, click on Reference. As you can see here, the new reference is created. But why reference? Why not duplicate? We are using reference because referencing allows us to keep the original Superstores data intact while applying specific transformations such as filtering for consumer sales without duplicating the entire data. This is more efficient in terms of memory usage than duplicating. Now, let's name the Superstores data reference query as consumer sales. Once we have referenced it, we will apply a filter on the segment column to keep only consumer data. In order to do that, click on the drop-down, click on Select All, and only choose Consumer. Click OK. Now, this table has only the data related to consumer segment. So, the first consumer sales table is created successfully. Next, let's create the second table. But instead of referencing the Superstores data again, we will duplicate the consumer sales query. But why duplicate now? Because the consumer sales query already contains the necessary transformations, and duplicating it will allow us to reuse those transformations and make minor adjustments without affecting the original reference. Let's create a duplicate of consumer sales query. To do that, right-click on consumer sales query, click on duplicate. A duplicate of it is created. Let's rename it as corporate sales. In this corporate sales query, we will change the filter to only corporate. To do that, click on the drop down again. Click on select all, only choose corporate. Click OK. Now, this table only has details related to corporate. Next, we'll repeat the same process for the third table, that is home office table. We'll create another duplicate of consumer sales query. To do that, the same process again. Right click on the consumer sales query. Click on duplicate. Let's name it as home office sales. And we filtered the segment column to show only home office data. This table only has the details related to home office. In this way, we see how referencing and duplicating work together effectively. We first created a reference to preserve the original data structure and then duplicated the filtered consumer sales query to create independent tables for corporate and home office sales. Now let's see how these queries are connected. In Power BI, we can view the query dependencies by going to the View tab and clicking on Query Dependencies. This visual shows how all queries are linked. All the three tables, consumer sales, corporate sales and home office sales, are connected to SuperStore data. Let's close this. Now, what if you try to delete the original SuperStore dataset? Let's try deleting it. To delete it, right click and click on Delete. Power BI will prevent you from doing so because it is being referenced by other tables we created. Here is a pop-up saying that it cannot be deleted as it is being referenced and used in other tables. This is one of the main reasons to understand the difference between referencing and duplicating, so you can avoid breaking dependencies. Now, let's load them back to the Power BI desktop. To do that, first let's click on Close and Apply, so the changes will be applied in the Power BI desktop. The changes are being applied here. As you can see, the datasets are loaded back into the Power BI desktop. This is all about today's lecture. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.